Hey, folks. Today I'm talking with Danielle Bernock, a relationship repair specialist, coach, speaker, and author who helps people move from feeling unloved and unseen towards knowing that they matter. Danielle brings both lived experience and trauma informed, faith based care to her work, especially with adults who are still carrying pain from childhood. Well, that's a long list. She is known online as that lady on the internet who loves you, which might be one of the clearest job descriptions I've ever heard. This conversation is about love, worth, courage, and what it can look like to come into your own later in life. So many of the conversations that I have, Danielle, are
hmm
people who found a diagnosis later in life, like ADHD or autism, or even dyslexia, or they found out that, hey, the way I was raised was not the best way for me, and maybe I need to do some reparenting.
hmm
And in your case, what you finally learned was that love was the answer in many ways,
hmm
right?
hmm
So, how did you arrive at that? Because I sense that you had a pretty harsh reality before then.
hmm I grew up with a lot of trauma that I wasn't aware that I had, but one of the things it instilled in me was a lot of fear. So I lived a very fear-based life in so many different ways. And I had been raised in the church a little bit, but then I had a trauma that happened at the church. I separated from the church, got mad at God, and he, in his love, chased me down and reconnected to me and slowly and graciously convinced me of his love because the picture I had of God was not one of love. It was not like that at all. So for him to do that, it really built that into me. And he provided my husband for me as a object lesson of unconditional love because I didn't know that was really a thing. He was my first encounter with unconditional love. And little by little, it became a part of my life. I started to be able to see it a little bit more. I wanted to believe God loved me, but struggled with that. And it took me 35 years to believe it on my worst day. He still loves me. When I was good, it was easy to believe he loved me. But when I was not good, I struggled. But I learned that. But the whole that lady on the internet who loves you came into being during the pandemic because I felt the fear that was in the atmosphere, the global fear that was going on, and it disturbed me to my core. Having known what it felt like to live from fear, I wanted to help people. What can I do to help alleviate all this fear? And love is what pushes fear out. The Bible says it, love casts fear out, which just sounds nice and simple, but it's not that simple. Well, it's that simple, but it's not that easy. Just, you read it and you know it. It
It's
takes,
always difficult in application.
yes, exactly, to get it on the inside of you. So I started just showing up because I was doing a lot of videos back then, doing Facebook Lives. I had a podcast and I just started showing up just real awkwardly with, I'm going to show, I love you. I'm here. I'm this lady here and I want to tell you that I love you because you matter. And yeah, I'm just stumbling all over it. And little by little, just doing it more and more and more. And one day I just took ownership of that line. I said, I am that lady on the internet who loves you. And now I have that IP protected. That line belongs to me and that identity belongs to me and no one else can have it. And it has been so powerful to be able to say that so boldly because I love you because you matter, because you are worthy of love. It's not romantic, it's not sexual, it's just because you are worthy of love. And I started showing up saying that all the time. It's in my footnote of things and everything all over the place now. And I've had people come up to me and say, "You're that lady on the internet who loves me." I love that. And people come to my business page on Facebook just to hear that every day because I post a picture of myself or sometimes something else to say, "Good morning, I love you. I'm that lady on the internet who loves you." Just to remind them daily, you are loved, you have value. because we need to hear it that many times. Think of how long it took you to learn the multiplication tables or to memorize anything in school. It takes time to get it from the outside to the inside. So every day, every day, every day.
So many things I want to highlight in what you said. The first of which, it's it really was applicable to COVID, but also to life, and that is responding to the question, "What can I do?"
Yeah.
Because during COVID, got that a lot. What can I do? What can I do?
Hmm.
Instead of just sitting here feeling stuck and locked away from people that I care about, and you took action.
Hmm.
You felt that global malaise, that heaviness,
Yeah.
and thought, I can bring some light to this.
Hmm.
And I hope everybody caught this part. You did it awkwardly.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't come out of the gate perfect. You stumbled, you made mistakes, you found your way. And that is one thing that people are often terrified to do,
Yeah.
especially on such a large scale.
Hmm.
If, correct me if I'm missing something, you saw such value in what it is you were doing. You realized that how you got there was secondary
Right.
to the importance of getting there. And that's what allows
Right.
for that awkwardness to be okay.
Yeah. Well, your why has to be bigger. Your why has to be bigger. Your why will drive you. That's how I published my first book, was that same awkwardness. I shared things in my first book that my best friend didn't even know about me at the time. So when I put that out in the world, I was freaking terrified. People were going to be reading this stuff about me. What are they going to think about me? I need to not care because my story is going to change people's lives. I don't know how many, but I know I have to share it. And then how it went out there and a quote from it went viral just astounded me, especially because it was my epiphany. It was the thing that changed everything for me that went viral. So it really resonated with people's heart. And it's the quote in there that starts with trauma is personal because people measure trauma by things they ought not. But part of that society has taught us that. And so we need to help people see it's okay to be where you are. What you did, it was trauma. You might not think it was, but it was. How is it affecting you now?
I imagine that one of the reasons you decided to disclose those things was the very response that you discovered.
Hmm.
It was something it generalizes to the human experience,
Hmm.
and that it wasn't just you. Did you have that sense before you wrote it down that, what if people think I'm weird because this thing happened to me?
Yeah, I've
Oh,
thought that. Like one of the things I put in my book that I have, one of the chapters is puzzle pieces. And it's like little snippets of things that happened in my life that God showed me and something later and how it applied and putting them together and different. It was very like, I have this box of puzzle pieces and I don't know how they go together. And so in the book, it helped put them where they went. And one of the things I talked about, and I think it was that chapter, how I felt so silly doing something. I learned how to care for myself is what I was illustrating. And I was illustrating how it went down to such a small level. So it felt like I felt stupid sharing this one thing, but I stepped on something wet and my sock got wet. Growing up, I have to just keep that on. I have to endure that. I have to put that up. I have to put up with that. I have to suck it up and just continue to go on. I'm like, no, I can change my socks. And that just seemed so silly to be able to make that shift. I felt like I was telling on myself or something like that. But it's like you said, the human condition that we feel silly, we feel shame, we feel awkward about things that are just normal and things that, you know, I don't have to keep the wet sock on. It doesn't prove I'm strong and courageous. It doesn't prove I'm stoic. It's like, do you notice? Does it bother you? What does it matter? Does it matter to you? And that's what matters is, does it matter to you? Are you caring for yourself properly because you matter?
when we learn that our needs are an inconvenience for others, we start to, like you said, just walk around with the wet sock because we've taught ourselves that our suffering just is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not allowed to have preferences because somebody else might get upset with us, or we can't have feelings because somebody else might poo-poo it. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're making too much of this. What you need to feel is that,
Uh-huh. I grew up with
or
that.
you need to think more positively. When I was like in fourth grade, a teacher handed me the book, The Power of Positive Thinking.
Oh, wow.
Because it didn't matter that I was being bullied, that my home life was atrocious. The problem was my attitude.
Mm. Did that
And it
book help you or did it hurt you?
was insulting because I looked at it and I'm thinking, how is thinking like this going to change the fact that I'm
Mm.
frightened of at least three different guys on the playground who are going to take turns picking on me?
Yeah, I can see that. That's why I asked, because that it can be a very powerful book, but a baseball bat is really good too, but you can't use it in football. You have to have the tool you need for where you're at.
Now, as an adult, you you learn greater perspective as you look in hindsight at everything that's
Hmm.
happened and ideally heal a lot of that stuff. But until you realize that you have that option,
Yeah.
and that's one thing I'm curious about is because you talked about how God worked for you, and I'm not terribly familiar with how that shows up,
Hmm.
what that explicit experience is. So
Hmm.
maybe you can go into a little bit more detail of these signals you were getting. You felt like you were being led. What did that look like? It sounds like it's very intuitive.
Hmm. Um, in what part? I have so many different parts of that.
In particular, you're raised to think you're worthless, and that is a really difficult cloud to snap out of
Hmm.
because you filter relationships through that, opportunities or lack of through that. You
Hmm.
begin to think that taking action is going to do nothing to change your life.
Hmm.
And then suddenly something happens where you're like, hang on, I do have a choice here.
Hmm.
And it's to believe that I am worthwhile, I'm worthy of being a friend with, and so on. How did you get to that point where you realize, aha, there's more for me than what I've been thinking all these years?
Oh, it was so incremental to get to that point that I matter. That didn't happen until I was living in Arizona in my 50s. It was when I went through a particular triggering of a trauma that took place when I was 6 years old. And it happened in front of people. They watched it happen. They're like, "Are you okay?" kind of thing. But after that happened, I went home and I sat in my chair and I gave God an ultimatum. I said, "You help me with this. I'm not getting up from this chair. I want that to never happen again." And so I was praying and, started, I guess, led in my thinking of what to do, of like, well, what happened? What just happened? What happened? And, you know, what was the circumstance I went through? And then where did it lead me? Where did the trigger take me to? So it was like I went on this internal journey from trigger to, you know, the result of the trigger. And what God showed me when I was sitting in that chair is I went through a progression of silent thoughts that happened so quickly, I was not aware of them. And I learned from a lady named Joyce Meyer the term mindset in a different way. Our mind gets set in a way. We learn this thing and we add these sequence of thoughts and they build on each other. And that's what it was. My mind was set in that pattern of that sequence. When this happens, I would cascade into I am worthless. And God opened my eyes to see that's where it led me to. So I knew where it took me to and what happened. So then he gave me something I call a silver bullet because old movies when I was growing up with werewolves or vampires or whatever, that they shot them with a silver bullet, it would stop them. That's where I got the idea for the term silver bullet. So what I needed to come up with was something to interrupt that thought process, something that would stop that cascade from going from the trigger to the response. And so that was the silver bullet. I came up with a short little sentence to rehearse when I'm not being triggered, like to feed it in there with that repetition so it gets in there. And the what I came up with was two words: I matter. So I started saying, I matter. I put it on sticky notes around my house. I matter. I started putting it everywhere. I matter. I matter. I matter. I started rehearsing that and feeding that into my heart, into my mind, into my emotions. When you say things, you're using your body to speak. So you're doing it one way. And then you're saying out loud. So you're hearing it. So you're hearing it that way. So that's two ways that you're doing it when you talk to yourself. I'd read a book a few years earlier, which was a gift, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, which was really helpful because we have self-talk. Some people won't admit it, but we do. I don't care if you don't want to admit
My
it. You talk
self-talk
to yourself.
never shuts up.
So if we can be intentional with how we talk to ourselves. And back when I got that book, I started that practice of speaking to myself with intention because I didn't even know that was a thing. So little breadcrumbs all along the way of these little puzzle pieces that I would apply whenever I got them. Because what we have available to us now is not available to me. I mean, we're talking about mental health now. They didn't talk about that back then. We could talk about trauma now. That wasn't a word back then. So we have so much more. People are so fortunate with the tools available to them. So since I started doing that, the I matter thing, I don't remember the situation, but I do know I had gone through an opportunity to be triggered again, and I spoke that, and it interrupted that, and it stopped the devastation that would come from that. And now it's not even a trigger anymore.
Such a powerful phrase to say and so simple. Because
Yeah.
one of the conversations I had online yesterday was about how do we get ourselves to sleep at night? How do you shut your brain off? And one of the things that keeps our brain busy is all the mistakes we made all day or all the catastrophes that we anticipate happening tomorrow. And usually there's I screwed up, I'm going to forget this, and then this is going to happen. And all of that self bludgeoning could be tempered with the I matter. I'm not this
Mm-hmm.
bad person I'm telling myself I am. I'm not this big screw up that people are going to be mad at, that people are going to reject.
Mm-hmm.
I matter more than that.
Uh-huh. You do.
And just the I matter is so powerful.
Yes.
And I can see that applying in so many situations. Somebody else just tore you down
Mm-hmm.
verbally.
Oh, yeah, many times. One of my core traumas happened in the church. That's why I wrestled so much with my relationship with God. When I was a child, they rejected me in front of the entire church, and being a child, I processed it that God threw me away. So
At
then
six years old?
no, that wasn't the 6 year old. I was around 10 then. The
Ah,
six
okay.
year old thing was at school, was my teacher who shamed me in front of the whole class by putting tape over my mouth and making me read in front of reading group with tape over my mouth.
What the heck makes somebody think of that?
I don't know. I don't
I,
know.
I
And my name, I changed my name legally in 1988 to Danielle. That's not my given name at birth because my name was weaponized against me as a preteen or some. I don't even know how old I was when it happened. And when I shared the story with my mother after we had repaired our relationship, she cried. And it astounded me because she wasn't real emotional like that. And she's the one who suggested I legally change my first name. And I was just, really? I can do that? So I went through the process and I did. I changed my first name.
That's a big step to take. I know somebody, a lady that changed her first and last name
Hmm.
and left her husband at the time because so much of that was connected to, you know, her being forced to be somebody that she wasn't.
Hmm.
And so she took control of all of it in order to start over and be who she was.
Good for her.
One thing I don't want to gloss over is you mentioned that the journey was incremental.
Hmm.
The term I use often is baby steps.
Yes.
Because far too often we look for a switch that doesn't hurt.
Hmm.
Give me the miracle quote or tell me which book I need to read so that I can just wipe the slate clean, be happy, and not have to worry about this again. But I don't imagine that this was smooth sailing for you. You know, God led you, God showed you, and it sounds like it's just, you're kind of moving along in the video game and you get to one level next and this level, and then
Yeah.
on this level, God shows you this. But what was it
That's a good
like?
illustration.
What was it like to have to actually go through this?
Ah, it varied. In some parts it was very joyful and in some parts it was very painful. I remember one of the stories I share in my book, Emerging with Wings. That's my personal story. It's my first book because I had a very huge problem with lack-mindedness. I felt very poor because it connected with the worthlessness. And we weren't poor. We made a bad decision when I was pregnant the first time, and we ended up on state aid and stuff like that. But we climbed out of that and we were living in a house that we had purchased. It was actually our second house we had purchased. We moved in one and then we moved out of that and moved into the next one. So, we weren't poor, but I still felt very poor and I had a lot of lack-mindedness. And God took me through an exercise. He had me do something. I don't remember what prompted it, but something prompted it. But he led me to go to my closet, and I called it a closet cleanse. He told me to go into my closet and into my drawer and take out every single item that had not been given as a gift or purchased brand new, and I had to get rid of it.
That's interesting criteria.
Yes, I had to get, and I cried because I had to get rid of some things that were my favorites. I had to get rid of some things that had belonged to my mother who is no longer alive. And I wept. Oh, it hurt so bad to do that. But what he was doing with that and with that pain, oh, I had read an article on someone talking about lack-mindedness, and the title of it, I think, was Secondhand Rose. And I grew up with hand-me-downs where I a lot of places and buying from thrift stores and a lot of that. So buying something new was a big deal to me. And I remember I had this one blouse that I bought that I spent what I thought was an exorbitant amount of money for. And looking back, and it really wasn't. But I felt that small. And because it was so emotional to do that, it did change me on the inside that I am worth new clothes. I am worth clothes that are well made. Don't, I'm, I don't need to wear the things with holes in them. I don't need to, I'm not second class. It took me from the second class to elevate my value. And that was before the whole I matter part. So,
And the broader implications of that is that you are worthy of new experiences.
yes.
You know, your life isn't just about rehashing all of the old pain for the rest
Yeah.
of your life and believing that everything that happens from now on is just going to be the same old muck.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you did that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Now, tell me more about your husband, this this
My
beacon of unconditional love that
he is
crossed your path.
he's not perfect. He's human like everybody else. But I have not had anyone love me like he loves me. We've been married for 46 years.
Wow.
His name is Michael, and he's chapter 3 in my first book, an entire chapter. He is a gift from God. God brought him into my life. I first met him in 8th grade. We had a class together, and we had to do a project together, which led to us having a common joke together the rest of that year. But then I didn't know him in 9th grade. But then I saw him at church when I had gotten back to going to church. And so I saw someone, a familiar face, and I hadn't seen anyone I knew before at church. No one I knew was going there. But no, familiar face. So I went over and said hello. So that's how we reconnected. But then He invited me to go to lunch. I couldn't go. I was not healed of my trauma yet. I was stuck in people pleasing. I was afraid he was thinking I made it up, but I had something I had to do. So then in my guilt, I'm like, I have to come back and make him know that I wasn't lying to him. So then we went to a church event together, me and my girlfriend, who I drove around. She had epilepsy, so I would pick her up and drive her everywhere. She couldn't drive. And so the three of us went to this revival at this church. And then I dropped her off afterwards, and we walked around the city where we both lived in the same city until 3 o'clock in the morning talking to one another. And that, if you want to call that a date, well, we're going to call it a date because we didn't do any dates, but we'll call them that because people understand the term. So that's when we started dating, and that was August 6th, and we planned to do certain things together. In the middle, we got together, we had our first kiss, and then I broke up with him because of the trauma, and I didn't want to be attached to him because I was afraid. And that first night, I told him all kinds of things, ugly things, like, go away from me. I'm not going to get attached to you because, you'll throw me away. So I did all the oversharing stuff you're not supposed to do because of the fear. But that first night, I found out later, God told him that night that I was his wife. He didn't tell me that night, but I could feel it somehow. I can't explain that. And it's a whole story, like I said, it's a whole chapter. But on September 1st, we got engaged. It was a very supernatural leading thing that if I didn't live it, I wouldn't believe it. Very strange things. After he proposed to me, we were at a camp. He had been at the camp for a week. I went up on the weekend with his mom and sister, and we went to, like a nature area for him to propose. And we sat in a blanket afterwards and just started thinking about, what did we just do? And we started thinking of the words bride and groom and, fiance and wedding. And what the heck are we doing? We didn't have a ring or anything. So we decided to keep it a secret until we had a clue what we were going to do. But then people started telling us that we were getting married. But when are you getting married? Or when are you going to tell us your engagement? I'm like, who told you? And they said, God told me. And I'm like, that's both validating and frustrating. So that's the beginning of our thing. And then we were married the February the following year.
So you've really been led a lot by just serendipity and these things coming into your life. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think a lot of this, because you fought him off for a little while there, how much of this evolution of you finding opportunities for newness and opportunities for love, how much stems from that decision that, you know what, I do matter, and I'm going to keep telling myself that?
Well, that I matter didn't come until many years later after we've been married. I didn't have that
Well,
thought mentality back then.
so what do you think the key was to you finally allowing that in,
The I matter,
allowing him in? I'm
him in.
actually worthy
Oh,
of someone
fighting
like
with
this.
God, fighting with God, fighting with him, arguing with him. Because I wrote a song. I used to play guitar and I would write songs. And I wrote a song, and then God told me I had to sing it to him. And I told him, no, I'm not doing that. You're out of your mind. And we argued until he won. So, and then I did because I realized how I came back to God through my anger at him is I realized I did not create myself. And I tried to prove God didn't exist and I failed. So I didn't create myself. And the Big Bang violates all the laws of physics. So I've never believed in that. And I just, he's always known better than me, even though when I first came back to him, I was terrified of him and his grace and his kindness. And that's something I need to tell people because that's not the God people hear about. They hear about the fire and brimstone and hell and anger and you better do that or God's going to get it. That's not the God I know. I know a kind and loving God who never leaves me, never abandons me, helps me. Life is not perfect. I go through lots of things, but he's with me in them. when you have someone with you, even when you're going through something, it makes a big difference. In fact, I have a new book coming out called Hungry for More, and the whole central theme is about connection or what I call withness. And I just shared with someone on LinkedIn this morning one of the stories I have in there about my girlfriend, Denise. She's no longer alive, and I love that I get to honor her in this book. When I lost my nephew, he was only 21 years old, and we were in Arizona at the time, so we had to fly back to Michigan for his funeral. People came out, family and friends came to support. People do that. And it's always, there's much more support at the funeral and all that. I know that it's hardest after everyone goes home and you're left by yourself.
Mhm.
But at the funeral, she showed up and she quietly took a seat in the back of the room and she stayed there the entire time. She did not leave. And her just being there with me was so powerful. Her presence of I love you to carry me through such a painful, painful time.
One last question for you.
Okay.
If someone else found themselves in your situation, they were later in life, they've been stuck all this time in pain, what is one next step that they could take to change things?
I always say the same thing, do something. Like you said at the beginning, people will just stay there. You have to do something. You can't wish for it. You have to start. If it'll be awkward, like we started at the beginning of our conversation. Yes, it will be awkward. There's a quote by a Nigerian poet that I used to start my book. I can't remember the whole thing, but it talks about start afraid, start with not knowing what's happening, start, but just start. You have to start, listen to more podcasts like this, read a book, go get counseling, hire a coach, but do something and then do something else. But do only one thing at a time that you can handle. Don't overwhelm yourself because we think, well, I need 27 things different. So you try to do 27 things and you'll do them for 5 minutes and then quit because we can't handle that. But if we do one thing and stick with it until it becomes a part of us, and then we do one thing again, then we'll get that incremental growth to where we're moving forward.
Beautiful way to finish this off. Danielle, I really appreciate your time and hearing everything you discovered, everything you've become, and everything you're sharing.
Thank you so much.
So
This was a delight.
thank you. It's a delight for me also. I really appreciate it. And everybody watching, please share this one so other people can benefit as well. And until next time, take care.
Love you.